Good morning. I would like to call the Stockbridge Board of Selectmen meeting for December 16th, 2021 to order. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to reverse the order a little bit in terms of our agenda. And so we will be starting with the annual entertainment license application for Berkshire Botanical Garden. So I move that we open the hearing to consider the application of Berkshire Botanical Garden, 5 West Stockbridge Road, and waive the reading of the notice to be incorporated into the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Do we have a representative from Berkshire Botanical Garden?
Hi, I'm Matt Larkin. I'm the chairman of the board of the Berkshire Botanical Garden. Been chairman for about 10 years.
You have to come up to
I'm sorry, you want to come
Yeah,
up?
sorry.
Sorry.
And he would, what's your name?
Matt Larkin.
Oh, hi, Matt.
Hi. Okay, Matt Larkin, chairman of the board of Berkshire Botanical Garden. The Botanical Garden is actually the second oldest not-for-profit in Stockbridge. We were established in 1934. And in that same year, we had our first event, which was the Horms Festival, which we have celebrated for the past 87 years, minus the past 2, when we felt as a sort of steward in our community that we wouldn't expose, our guests to 15,000 people over a period of 2 days. It's a mixed blessing for us. We do it for 2 reasons. The first is that everybody loves it. We have generational visitors that come and see it every year, but it's a huge amount of work. It trashes our campus, but it is also our largest fundraiser every year. Lots of different, I'm sure everybody's been. I don't know anybody who hasn't been. It's been around forever. And so in addition to what we do as far as education and showing our gardens to the public, we're always in the need of additional support. And so events have been an important source of revenue for us. And recently, in the past 2 years, we've implemented something called Music Mondays, which for the first year that we did it in 2020, we offered it as a free service to the community, and people just loved it. And so getting the response that we did last year, we decided to charge admission for it. We have about 100 people. We scheduled 10 concerts. We ended up having 9 last year because of rain. We had to cancel one. The type of music that we offer there is jazz, big band, folk music. We don't have rock concerts at our parties and our musical Mondays. They run from 5:30 in the afternoon till 7:30 in the afternoon. And we have tried to reach out to our neighbors to get on some understanding as to what could be a problem with what we were doing. And for the most part, people are supportive, but we do have some neighbors that aren't. And so we're coming here just to kind of talk about who we are in the community and what we do to not only serve our visitors from out of state, but here in town. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, so the Music Mondays. I'm not sure that everyone has enjoyed it.
No, I think it's the Harvest Festival that everybody's enjoyed.
Everybody loves the Harvest Festival. But that is amplified music, and it has been, correct? Is there any way that you can control the direction of that music? And where specifically on the grounds are you holding that?
We have a gazebo in our topiary garden that's covered and has power. And so that has been our go-to spot rather than taking on the expense of renting a tent for every Monday. We found that, oftentimes the disruption of tents in our garden, which we do for weddings, is we try and space it out as much as possible so that the visitor experience isn't always interfered with a big tent. So the topiary garden and the gazebo is the perfect place for the musicians to set up. So that's been our go-to spot, is to changing the direction of the music. I can't speak to that, but we have Dana Audia here, who is our director of events, who might be able to respond better to that.
Dana, would you mind coming up, please, and identify yourself?
Good morning. I'm Dana Audia, and I am the Director of Special Events at the Berkshire Botanical Garden. In your packet, there may be a map of where Lucy's garden is, and we depends on the band, truthfully, and how large their speakers are. They're never terribly large because we load them in the back of our little, what we call our mule to take down, so they can't be too big. But we have usually in the past moved the direction of the speakers toward 102. So instead of going toward 183, we shoot it across the street. Our crowds seem to sit on the hill where there's a natural rake. And so we have tried to be conscious of the direction the speakers are pointing.
Okay, so this little
Yeah.
piece on the diagram, is that where you're indicating that people are sitting?
Yes, that's correct.
Here?
Yeah, okay, exactly. And that little gazebo's where, as Matt said, the music is, and then we have them, the direction that they face is up the hill. What we say up the hill, and it's
Into our
facing
property.
102. Yeah, into our property.
Is it still up for public comment yet?
Yeah.
Not yet.
So how many Music Mondays are you planning for 2022?
Right now, we would like to do July and August. I believe that's either 8 or 9. I believe there's
Less than
actually
10.
this year 9 Mondays.
Less than 10.
Yeah, less than 10. We
Fewer.
decided not to go past Labor Day. It starts getting dark and the crowds are less. So we would just like to do it again this summer, July and August on Monday nights.
Chuck, do you have questions?
Not at this point.
And then typically, how many, I do have another question. How many weddings do you do per year?
I'd say a dozen.
And generally, are those tented or indoors? What
I
is,
would say 75% are indoors. We do have some that are out in our Proctor Garden, which is adjacent to the center house. And it will only fit a 30 by 60 tent, which means only 100 people can be in that space. So that's kind of our maximum that we have. But most of it's happened in the center house.
you good? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're prepared to hear statements in support or in opposition from the public. Could you come up and identify yourself, please?
My name is Keith Knudsen. I live behind the Botanical Gardens for 8 years now. I moved to the area thinking I was living next to a fairly sedate facility. That was a botanical garden. I was moving next to an entertainment venue. I wish I had known about your future plans at the time. All through the last few seasons of this, I feel that I'm strongly opposed to this for a few reasons. One, I don't think it's a good use. It's a compatible use to a botanical garden. I think it causes undue disruption and discomfort to almost all of the neighbors, which are really annoyed, is a nice way to put it. The way it's been done up till now is like where you place your speakers is not beneficial to the neighborhood because there's no sound control. You're not doing acoustic concerts, they're amplified. The amplified test a normal amount. They're done without supervision. So all of the amplification is done that's why I was told by people who work at the Botanical Gardens. So with the speakers facing in the direction you guys have them, basically the neighborhood gets the benefit of all the bass and not the music. So we are like assaulted by this drumming all the time. And I don't know if you've heard, but up the road, one of the neighbors has taken it into his own hands to run his own power equipment. Or as I protest to that because he doesn't appreciate it, and I can understand why. What that does is it puts us between two people with battling interests with music, which makes my life miserable. Often in the evenings, when those concerts are going, my kids are young, they're going to bed. They have to wait for those concerts to end to go to sleep on a school night. So it's a real disruption to our lives. One of the things with the way the speakers are set up, I would respectfully request that with all the property that the Botanical Gardens has, that it is not done in the location as is. There's property that is kind of landlocked, surrounded by Botanical Gardens property. You have a huge field on the corner of 102 and 183. You have all these facilities by the house across where the headquarters are that would serve to be a lot less disruptive to the community. And so I think there, A, are other locations, B, there should be better sound controls if in fact that turns out to be the only place it could be. I don't know how you would monitor that. I just think, I don't personally think would be considered an acceptable use for something. I know there's a lot of mixed use areas in Stockbridge, but I don't think concert series and events with amplified music on a regular basis. I understand the Harvest Festival that happens periodically, they're fundraisers, but to make it into a regular cyclical entertainment venue, I don't think is compatible with its expected use as a botanical garden. So I would like to have a cooperative solution to this because we're neighbors. But up until now, I've been really perturbed by how this has gone. It has been over amplified. A lot of the weddings have gone over hours, and well, maybe it's within acceptable hours, but I can tell you that I was sitting inside my studio in my home office behind closed windows, half a quarter mile away from the actual building, and I could still hear the music. I had to put music on to drown it out. So it's disruptive, and I'm not like a NIMBY sort of not in my backyard person. I totally get that you guys have to do fundraisers and do things like that, but I feel like it should be in consideration of the neighbors, because I intentionally don't do things in my yard that would be an eyesore for the Botanical Gardens to look at, like just to be a good neighbor. And I think there's got to be some kind of solution that we can come to that doesn't completely disrupt the entire neighborhood. Because I feel one way, and I know there's other people in the neighborhood that feel so much more strongly than I do, and militantly against it, to the point where they'll be doing things to create competing noises and things like that. And it just makes the neighborhood unbearable. So there's got to be a good solution, I feel, so that we can have a life and you guys can do what you need to do. Whether it's by restricting the times, restricting the types of concerts, if they're not amplified, if they're more acoustic or whatever it's going to be. I would think a different, not blasting jam bands in my backyard is not cool. It's not even music I want to listen to. So I would hope that there even a change of style of the events you guys are doing or something, but just something that makes it a lot more less disruptive. I don't want to say don't do anything, but I would just like it to be a little more respectful and contained. And particularly if it's going to be this expanding thing of events, I've had to chase people out of my yard from the Botanical Gardens. You think it's the sedate thing. I've had to chase people that are in my yard smoking weed at your events. I don't like it. I would like to have a little.
In light of that, we have perhaps a number of people to hear from. If you have anything else, could you just?
No, that's it. I apologize. I just. Sorry about that.
All right, well, thank you very much. Do we have anyone else in the room present who would like to speak? Please come and identify yourself.
John Payron, I'm at 8 Interlincoln Road. Keith pretty much said a lot for me, so I don't have to go into all that again. I guess there's just two concerns. One is, I've been a neighbor of the Berkshire Garden Center for probably almost 50 years. It was a place where the herb ladies met. They did classes on stone walls. horticulture classes, camps for kids, all that type of thing. There are plant sales and the Harvest Festival. I mean, that's, you know, my wife and I and the kids have all participated in all that. The two problems I have is, one is, where is this gonna go? You know, is Music Mondays gonna turn into something else for Tuesday and then Wednesday, and then this just gets expanded, that we have a problem like what's going on at Namkay. My other big concern is the amplification. I think if you're gonna advertise serenity and this nice garden setting, just amplified music just doesn't seem to fit. You know, it's the same. We cook outside, we eat outside in the summer. We can't sit on our patio. We have the sound from the turnpike coming one way. We have the sound and the bass coming from the garden center the other way. You know, you can place speakers any way you want. The sound is going to reflect off of different buildings. So it doesn't matter if you're facing them this way or that way. That bass is going to reflect off of buildings. And that's what we're getting. With the weddings, one of them was just way over the top. And, you know, it doesn't really help when I'm trying to watch TV. We actually leave our house, come back at night, the wedding's still going on. It was almost 10 o'clock. The bass is coming and I have all the windows shut in our house in the summertime. My wife's trying to read in one room and I keep turning up the TV in the other room to try to, you know, so it just compounds. So, you know, I don't think I'd really be opposed to this if it was acoustic, non-amplified. We could try something like that for a year. I think that's fair enough. You know, we live in our house by right as a residence. We don't need special permits. And we're basically being driven out of our house at times at night just to get away from the noise. And that's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else present in the room? Harold, please come up and identify yourself.
To me.
For those who don't know you.
Lots of people won't know you.
I'm Harold French, 47 Church Street. I live almost exactly a mile from Berkshire Botanical Garden. And I hear the music a mile away. And the other thing I recommend, go back to the way Roy Boutard ran it. It was user-friendly, it was people-friendly, the neighbors all got along. You guys just blow it all out of proportion what it was meant to be.
Thank you. Do we have anyone on Zoom who would like to speak?
You have somebody else on the room?
Oh, we have someone else over here. Please come up and identify yourself.
Well, used to having people over there or even out
I
here.
know. I can't see some of the people over there.
Nice.
I'm Ginger Schwartz, 22 Main Street. I'm most dismayed by the polarization that's showing in this town. This has been going on for 2 years. I think maybe this is not the, I have questions. Is this the forum to decide this larger problem or one that's becoming this bigger problem? Is mediation an idea?
This is the forum.
This is the forum, because I'm hearing an awful lot of statements of problems, but not solutions, of not coming together.
We are at this point
So
just
it's a
hearing,
polarizing conversation, and it's very distressing for the rest of the town.
well, at this point, we are just taking comments about the issues surrounding this application for an annual entertainment license, whether they be pro or con.
And then,
That is the role. Then we will be closing the hearing to deliberate among ourselves.
with no extra parties involved or
No,
mediation. or-
That's not for us to decide. That's for the parties to decide. I mean, obviously, there's
That's
Berkshire,
right.
there are mediation groups in Berkshire County. I would encourage anyone with conflict to to avail themselves of those services. They're free. In fact, a Stockbridge resident was a Berkshire County mediator for a long time. So, you know, if any of the people in the room feel that they want to have a mediated conversation with neighbors or whoever, other parties, we recommend it. We just can't enforce it. I mean, we
we are
can't
not in
require
that
it.
position.
Maybe it's a good suggestion, because this clearly is not working.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any hands up?
I see no hands raised from the,
I just wanted to apologize again. I didn't mean to run off like that.
No, you're good.
No.
No problem to
That's
apologize.
fine. Thank you, Keith.
You have a freedom to speak.
Is there an opportunity to rebut some of the statements?
Yes.
Yes, you may come up.
So there was a few comments that was made by this gentleman back here that were not true. I am at every single event.
Okay.
I am the one that when we go past 11 o'clock for weddings, which the town has said we can do.
Right.
If it goes 1 minute past that, the neighbors are calling.
Gotcha.
I've not had one neighbor call me past 11 o'clock. I am very conscious of that because I'm aware it's 11 o'clock.
Right.
Now, it's a little different on Music Mondays.
Can I?
Wait,
Okay, sure.
first of all, we have concerts 8 or 9 times in July and August.
Right.
I don't know a lot of schools that are open and kids going to school Tuesday morning in July and August.
that's
Now,
true,
I could be wrong. We do have amplified music. When it gets too loud, and our director is there last summer of every concert, we're aware of the disruption. That's why we don't have rock and roll. That's why, yes, and they all are amplified so the people can hear it. You know, that's really the extent of it, because otherwise, if it's not amplified, the people up on the hill, not toward 183.
Right.
That's really, they're not going to hear it. If we can't amplify it in some manner, it's going to be pointless, really, because people other than just sitting right around that gazebo won't hear it.
Right.
I totally get what you're saying. We started this because we thought it would be fun. And we thought the neighbors would enjoy coming across the street or sitting in their lawns and listening. We really never imagined that this would be a problem. And I am here to apologize to everyone that this has become a thing, because we really, really meant for this to be a nice community event. So in that regard, we're really sorry that we are disruptive. But we did pick a Monday night because we thought it would be less disruptive. And we try to keep it from 5:30 to 7:30 because hopefully that is early enough. We're happy to talk to the neighbors and anybody that's unhappy with us, and we can show you where speakers are and think about where they ought to be pointed. I'm happy to do that, and I know our director would be, as well as Matt. So we don't want people upset with us, but I did have to say there are a few things you had mentioned that I just had to say.
Yeah, I wasn't, just to be clear, between the two of us, I wasn't inventing it. So like in the summers, my kids have things they have to get up for. So like I did have issues with them, getting them to bed. It's not every single time, but enough times to make it hard. So, and secondly, they're not being supervised. I had a neighbor come and tell me to say they went over to ask the band to turn the music down. And I'm guessing the band told them they couldn't do anything. And so they didn't connect them with you. So if you were there, that's useful to know, because the people that I've spoken to that are neighbors were left with the impression that the bands got set up to do their thing. So thanks for that. I appreciate that.
And I'm happy to give my number out to anybody that has a problem or it's too loud or whatever, and you can call me. And I'm happy to walk over to the band and say, guys, come on, we gotta turn it down a little.
Yeah, we've always had a really collegial relationship with the town.
Yes,
We've had
keep that.
classes on our property, cutting our apple trees, so we view it as like a peaceful, coexisting relationship that we can all benefit from each other. I think it was, to me, it got my back up because I felt, and along with other reasons I won't bring up here, but that the tone was changing, not from the neighbor side, but from the botanical gardens.
Better. Yeah, no, we okay.
Get together.
Thank you. Thank
One
you.
solution is what I was
We'll
going to
figure it
suggest,
out.
is moving the location onto the other side of 102 and 183 where the other buildings are, and
Right.
not so much on that slope, because that is sort
Okay.
of surrounded
Keith,
by. double yellows.
We have a lot of business to get through, so.
What's,
all right.
what's the average attendance to these concerts?
Like 100 people. It's not huge. You know, if we have a big band that's really popular, like the Lucky Five, or, you know, Wanda Houston is always a good draw, we might have 150. But, you know, we don't draw concerts, big, huge concerts. It's really just a community thing.
All right, well, thank you, Dana. Anyone else on Zoom?
No one's hands are up.
Okay. I move that we close the evidentiary portion of this hearing for deliberation of the board. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So, leading off, right now I'm going to make one comment, not as a selectman, but as a neighbor. And I can tell you that I can verify that, and I'm surprised to hear that you don't play any rock music, because there was one time, and it was not this year, it was last year. It sounded like heavy metal music. I didn't even think about Music Mondays. I thought there was some teenager somewhere in the vicinity playing music really loud outside. It was, the bass was coming through, and I've heard this comment from several different people. It was so bad that my dogs would not stay outside in the yard. So they would go to put them out, they'd go out, they turned around, came right back in. Just saying. So that we know that there's an issue here, and it does seem to be disruptive to any number of neighbors. And part of that is because of the location, I think, of where you're doing the event, and certainly the fact that it's amplified music. So would you like to make comments?
Yeah, I would like to, as far as the weddings go, I think the weddings should be inside. Maybe the ceremony stuff outside, but all the weddings, because they're, you know, different events and stuff, and it's private parties and stuff the public's invited to, should be inside. I would go without amplified music if they leave it where they're at. And if they try a new location, to try the amplified music and see how it works. And if we get complaints and stuff, we can readdress it and at that point in either deny the amplified music there also, or
Okay,
I think we need to really, you know, get this down to a suitable level of noise.
I do too. And you have comments? Pat?
Yeah, well, look at, one of the reasons why we're, you know, not just a Stockbridge, but really as a county, we're trying to encourage in this new normal that we find ourselves, i.e. all these masks, you know, to have events outside. And I understand that creates inconvenience for the neighbors. I also feel like this could go on for a while, guys, and we need to be sensitive. Now, having said that, the speaker who talked about, you know, the encroachment, the expansion, a little bit a year of the types of programming that are happening at these venues, I think is a reasonable concern. And I would support a compromise that would involve perhaps limiting, like no more than 2 or 3 outdoor weddings a year, no more than 6 or 8 Music Mondays a year. And that's it. That's what you can do. So there's no risk that it becomes Music Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You know, and I think that allows folks to enjoy entertainment without going indoors, and that could still be an issue next summer, while at the same time protecting the community from basically having, you know, Monday through Sunday nonstop, you know, programming to maximize, you know, engagement or revenue or whatever you want to call it. And I think that the whole trick here is for everyone to consider how you can compromise with your neighbors to come up with something that everyone can live with. Maybe not everyone loves, but, you know, I'm not inclined to go all or nothing on these sorts of decisions. I think we all got to come together and compromise.
Right. I mean, my position is basically, we need to make sure that our nonprofits are viable. they can maintain their viability economically. On the other hand, we do have to protect the quiet enjoyment of residents on their property. So I would make a suggestion, and one of the other comments that was made by several people was the fact of a music venue. Berkshire Botanical Garden is a garden. It's a beautiful setting. It's understandable that people want to have weddings there. It's a natural use of a beautiful space. On the other hand, becoming a music venue is questionable in some people's minds in terms of the type of use. What I would suggest is that we grant the annual entertainment license for indoor events only. And for those events that will be outside, that you come in with a special request to the select board for those events. And then each one can actually be considered on its own merits, where the location is. What are you thinking about doing? What would be the attendance for that specific event? And we go from there. And so I wanted to hear my fellow selectmen's reaction to that suggestion.
I don't think the issues change whether it's a special permit or an entertainment license. We can condition the license to limit the number of events. And you know, it strikes me that like they've already disclosed where they're putting the tents for the outdoor weddings if we're going to allow them. You know, having this meeting, you know, 10 times a year, I just feel like, you know, we can.
Well, if Music Mondays is a regular event, okay, the reason I suggest that is by doing that, then for each specific event, we can determine where the location is. Will it be amplified or not? How will it be amplified? How will it be controlled? I think that there's some compromises here that can be made, but I don't think we're going to solve it just by doing one annual entertainment license and trying to stipulate for everything that's going to happen. I think that it may be safer and we're protecting the residents more if we look at each specific, and if it doesn't work, say we grant a special,
Right.
and then we have a problem, then we can adjust it from there. Because I know one comment was made in terms of, I mean, looking at this map, I'm pretty concerned about everything on that side of the road, because that's impacting the most neighbors. When they're doing the Music Mondays, the south side of 102 is where most of the abutting neighbors are, and those people are affected. It may be that we could adapt it and try it and see how it works in a different location. But this would be something that we would have to talk about, and it would be specific to an event. What do you think, Chuck?
Let me think about this for a minute, because I don't know if I really want to get involved in every event, trying to find a location, trying to,
Hey, Roxanne,
you know.
can I just say,
No, the hearing's closed.
No, Dana,
I'm sorry. Oops.
we're in deliberation.
Oh,
The only question I think we need an answer from them is, are these weddings for this year are all booked up, correct?
I'm sorry.
The weddings that you had how many weddings this year?
This year, like a dozen.
And they're all booked and logged in, or are they?
Oh, no, that we've already had this past year. We had a dozen between May and October.
Okay, do you have any locked in for the upcoming
Oh, for
year?
next year, yes, sir.
How many events
How
are
many?
those?
10.
You have 10 locked in, so technically, you
How
know.
many of those are outdoors?
Let's see. Right now, none of them. They're all in the center house.
Although the ceremonies are.
Yeah.
Ceremonies are fine outside, that's not the issue.
Not the
But
issue.
as far as their music or cocktails or any other, they're all in the center house currently.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's perfect, I mean, that's,
Okay.
I personally, I like the idea of
because we
limiting it
can't,
to 6.
we can't,
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. I told you wrong. I do already have 4. Yeah.
For outside?
Now, those tents go in the Proctor Garden adjacent
Okay.
for those weddings. That is one thing we have done. We've limited wedding tents to that Proctor Garden that's adjacent, so that weddings are not out by 183 and 102.
Okay, but where does the music take place? Where is the amplification?
It is in the tent in the Proctor Garden.
Okay.
And 9 times out of 10, it's a DJ that's easy enough to turn down.
Okay.
Can I make just a quick point?
No, I'm sorry.
No.
I'll make it really quick.
No, we're in deliberation.
Oh.
I'm
so
sorry. No more
It's not a
public
fast
comment.
decision you guys made.
Well, I mean, the clear problem here, I think, is the amplification of music. So how do we feel about granting the entertainment license with no amplification?
I think I would like to, my preference would be, given 10 events, she's already sold 4, and it creates, it creates,
Well, if there are 4 and the amplification is inside of a tent, and that tent is way over here in the Proctor Garden, that's one issue.
well, Harold says you can still hear it a mile away. I don't
No,
think it
that's
matters.
Music Mondays, I think, that Harold has said he's heard. Is that correct, Harold?
I didn't pay attention to the day of the week.
Okay.
I don't think much of the issue is the weddings, if we can contain them in that area and inside, either in the tent or
Right.
the things. I think the weddings is not an issue. It's the music Monday night.
Music Mondays that
Which I
they're
think would
creating.
be,
Pete specifically, some of the neighbors specifically, I think John did as well, specifically talked about being inconvenienced for some of the weddings. And I'm not, I would rather not micromanage their business. I just feel like, given the number of the days they can do outdoor events and however they want to use those days is fine. I think that 10 a year out of 365 days is a reasonable compromise. It allows them to not have a giant expansion of what the program is. If they want to do 10 weddings, great. If they want to do 10, well, I would prefer not 10 Music Mondays, but if they want to do 10 events, let them decide how to use them.
Well, I mean, the problem though is not so much the weddings. I mean, yes, there's been some comment about weddings. That has not been the overwhelming amount of complaints that I've heard. Overwhelmingly, it has been Music Mondays. And because I live fairly close by, although there's a pretty good buffer between my house and I'm on 102 going towards town, I have a wooded area and a neighbor's house between me and the corner. So I'm diagonally south of where you're holding Music Mondays. And I just go in my house. I ignore it. But I can appreciate the kind of disruption that it causes and the fact that it's in the summertime and people want to enjoy their backyards. They want to be outside in their yards, and it is disruptive. So the majority of the complaints are surrounding the amplified music on Music Mondays.
so I would make the suggestion that we just not have any amplified music outside.
May I ask a point of order?
Yes.
I'm Thaddeus Thompson. I'm the interim executive director at Berkshire Botanical Garden. And I started.
Would you mind coming up if you're going to speak so we can be seen?
I'm saying the hearing's closed.
I appreciate it. And it's essentially a point of order question, but Thaddeus Thompson, I'm the interim executive director at Berkshire Botanical Garden, started in September. And so I appreciate the opportunity to listen to neighbors' concerns. We certainly do.
Well, what is your point of order?
My question is whether the condition, the stipulation you intend to make, you intend to apply equally to all of the nonprofits in the area, whether that includes Tanglewood, the Rockwell, and so forth.
Well, I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
Because basically all of our nonprofits are in residential neighborhoods.
Correct.
All those residential neighborhoods are not the same geographically. They are not the same in terms of the number of residential homes. They're not the same in terms of the proximity of those residential homes. So there can be variation based on the specifics of each individual property.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, well, I agree with Chuck in terms of, I think we can grant the annual entertainment license based on the information we're given with the one restriction that there not be amplified music out of doors. It is
Does that include
certainly
tents or
fine
not?
within a tent,
It's okay within a tent.
within the tent.
And no limit to the number of tented events?
I don't think it's at this point, that putting limits on is gonna,
Yeah.
I don't know if we can legally put limits on it. on the amount of events.
Yeah, I think based on the information we have, and that is we're being told that those weddings will be tented. They will be over in the Proctor Garden, correct? And the music, the amplified music would be inside the tent,
Correct.
which means inside. It's still inside.
I just don't see this as much of a compromise, frankly. They've been doing tented weddings for years. Music Mondays is, I think, the concern that many of the folks have. I would much rather have allow a limited amount of outdoor programming. I think it's the right thing for a larger community. I think that we can put limits on it to make sure it doesn't expand. And I think we should be the ones who are looking for compromise so that everyone gets a little of what they want. Nobody gets everything that they want. I think that's a good path forward. And what you're basically doing is shutting down Music Mondays. But
No, it could be acoustic music.
For 100 people, I mean, how loud do you have music for 100 people? You just bring them down the hill farther and they can hear it. It's not like it's 3, 4,
I live
5.
across from Tanglewood. I know a little about hearing it. And frankly, I don't like the idea of regulating events based on the type of music they play. It's not for me to say whether,
Not based
somebody.
on the type of music, it's based on whether or not it's amplified or acoustic. Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we grant the entertainment license with no outside amplified music.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If you get complaints, we can readdress it.
What's that?
I mean, if this doesn't work, we'll listen to get complaints, we can readdress it. And try to make
So you're
changes.
suggesting, Roxanne, your suggestion was that they come in for a special
We have a motion on the
permit.
table. We have a vote underway. What is your vote, Patrick?
Really, Roxanne? All right, I'm not going to vote against the entertainment license, so I'll vote aye.
All right. So we are approved for an annual entertainment license for Berkshire Botanical Garden with the one exception that we will not allow amplified music out of doors. Thank you very much. So, next on the agenda, we have another annual entertainment license. So I move that we open the hearing to consider the application of trustees of the reservation for non-CAG 5 Prospect Hill Road and waive the reading of the notice to be incorporated into the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roxanne, I'm sorry, we're really here for Glendale Fire Department, and we're gonna have to be excused because we have an appointment that we cannot break. So maybe we can have it adjourned and have it another time. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have to hold the public hearings first. Brian, would you like to speak?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Cruy. I am the director for the Southern Berkshire portfolio here in Berkshire County for the trustees of reservations. And that includes non-CAG. And like the Botanical Garden, we have been great partners with the town since 1960 when Mabel Choate left us the property on 5 Prospect Hill Road as the 44 acres between Prospect Hill Road and Church Street. And so this is not our first time here. And we have always tried to be good neighbors and listen to what our neighbors have had to say and make changes based on that. We've completely eliminated weddings from the property outdoors with few exceptions. Last year we did have one for an employee who was getting married there. We do have smaller ceremonies, but we have completely cut out receptions so that we are no longer having tented receptions on the property. We have drastically reduced the number of concerts that we have. We used to do upwards of 15, but based on the feedback that we got from neighbors, we moved those concerts so that the music could be less heard down on Church Street. And last year we only had 6 of those Thursday night concerts, all of which end at 7:45. We have also, continually, tried to work with our different events and our traffic patterns so that they do not cause disruption to any of our neighbors on Prospect Road or Church Street. And that includes, limiting the number of people that we have on property by moving to a reservation-based ticket system and employing shuttle buses so that we can limit the number of traffic on Church Street. When we first heard complaints, this year about the lights that were shining into people's, windows because we started using the barn drive. We also addressed that. We eliminated parking that we had planned on site so that we could increase our capacity and kept everything in downtown Stockbridge. And we reversed the flow of that traffic pattern so that those headlights would no longer be an issue. So, we're happy to listen to any concerns and, do what we can to continue to be good neighbors and partners with the town of Stockbridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have members of the public who would like to speak?
Roxanne?
Please come up and identify yourself. I know you did submit something that you would like us to read into the record.
That's correct. That's all I was going to say.
All right. Thank you. This is Tom LaBelle, by the way. So we will begin by reading the submission by Tom LaBelle.
Which one? There's one last night too.
There's one that we were requested. Let me make sure I can find it now. That's not it. Yes, this is it. There we go. Okay, so he starts out by quoting chapter 140, section 183A, which I think is important for everyone to understand. Under Mass General Law, the licensing authority shall grant a license under this section unless they find that the license taken alone or in combination with other licensed activities on the premises.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yes.
but that's the wrong submission.
Okay, which one are we talking about there?
This one right here. Those are my comments. It's the numbered ones are Tom's comments. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I have that. I thought you wanted us to read this in.
Well, no, the other.
Chapter and verse.
The other one was just for your own information.
All right, so number one, then I'll just start with what are your questions and or comments. Number one, in an interview with Zydalis Bauer of Connecting Point, an online publication, Brian Cruey was quoted as follows: "Every year we try to make it bigger, better," end of quote. I know that better is a matter of taste, but I'm concerned about the bigger. Can the board get an unequivocal answer from Brian as to whether NOMCAG will be adding new entertainments to its bill of fare or expanding the existing attractions? In either case, could the board ascertain if there are in fact plans for an expanded program? If so, can they get specific information as to the nature and size of these programs? And my response would be, we can ask for the specifics of 2022. That is what we are here to decide upon. We cannot, nor are we obligated to ask about future plans. I think that Brian has shown that he's quite sensitive to neighbors' concerns, and certainly your comment is appreciated. However, we can't project out, what's happening in 5 years, what's happening in the 2023, et cetera. We are here today to rule on the application for 2020.
We could ask if they plan on expanding them, which was Tom's point.
Well, we can ask, but Brian, are you talking about advancing this forever and expanding forever?
Or next year.
And you may, yes, please come up, but I do have one question. In comparison to 2019, what were your numbers this year?
Sure. So for the Incredible Mound Cake Pumpkin Show, this year versus 2019, our admissions for that event were down 38% from 2019. For Winter Lights, those numbers are down 15%. So yes, we do try to be bigger and better for the guests that do come. You know, we always want to try to make it feel fresh and new and, you know, give people a good time when they're there. But in terms of actual numbers, we have taken a dramatic decrease in the number of people that we allow on property. That's one for, you know, the good of our neighbors, and two, also for the sustainability of our property. You know, it's, you know, we're always trying to thread that needle of, you know, what's the right number, you know, and what we can sustain. So
Brian, did the number of events drop or the number of participants per night drop?
the number of participants per night dropped. You know, the number of events has, for those two events, has mostly stayed the same.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. All right, moving on to number 2 of Tom LaBelle's comments and questions. According to attendance numbers listed on briancruey.com, 40,000 people visit the Winter Lights Festival, 20,000 visit the Pumpkin Walk, and 10,000 visit the Lower Festival and Sale. In addition to this, there are, I believe, 25 musical evenings and various other miscellaneous events. And of course, the museum, which brings in 11,000 visitors. My question is this: will NOMCAG be required to submit a hard and fast traffic management plan at this hearing, or will they be permitted to improvise traffic solutions without input from the abutters as they have in recent years? And I would ask, basically, first I want to say, it's up to the board to determine if the traffic flow requires conditions, or what kind of conditions might be appropriate, whether or not we would need a traffic police detail. So that is really up to us and not the responsibility of NOMCAG. And Brian might want to answer the question about, let's see.
Before, we did have a hearing on a traffic plan for this year for Winter Lights. We did it with Michael's recommendation that we're going to do the shuttle buses out of town hall. That was going to try to keep the parking off the property. I don't think, there's a few things here. There were, according to the testimony that Brian just gave, there were 6 events last year, not 25.
I was going to let Brian answer that one, but okay.
Oh, okay, that's fine. But
That was what I was going to ask, because I don't believe there were 25 musical events.
But just to the point of traffic, we specifically did have on the agenda, I believe, the question of how we're going to manage traffic for this.
We did have a discussion, yes.
Yeah.
And that is obviously,
So-
that is up to the select.
And then these meetings are open to
We
the
work in
public.
conjunction with NOMCAG. Brian has been very cooperative,
Yeah.
and in conjunction with our police department.
Right. I would also just point out that, I believe we're talking about something like 400 visitors a day over 4 hours, which is 100 an hour. People usually come to town hall and 2 or 4 to a car. We're talking about 25 to 50 cars an hour coming into town, which by the way helps the merchants. And, this is
We're not deliberating at this point, so.
I understand. I'm just replying. I want to reply to the points as they're made, because I think this is a very lengthy thing. And I would just point
Keep
out,
it from being too lengthy.
when people are watching, we talk over each other, it's hard to understand. So perhaps at least let each other finish the sentences before we go.
Perhaps you could wait to be recognized by the chair.
I will absolutely not wait to be recognized for the chair. I'm a selectman just like you, Roxanne.
You have to be recognized by the chair.
You do. Yeah, okay, we'll see how that goes.
All right, we're going to move on to number 3. Does the board truly believe that hosting activities that bring close to 90,000 people into a thickly settled neighborhood does not constitute an unreasonable increase in vehicle traffic? If it doesn't, what exactly constitutes an unreasonable number in a town of 1,800 people? Again, this is up to the board when we deliberate. Number 4, under chapter 140, section 183A, the following enterprises can apply for a license: inn holders, common victualers, keepers of taverns, clubs, restaurants, concerts, dances, exhibitions, cabarets, and organizers of public shows. Which of these is applicable to NOMCAG, and which of these is permitted in any residential zone in this town? According to the table of use regulations, these uses are prohibited in all residential zones. Which brings me to my last question. Does the issuance of common victualler, alcohol, and entertainment licenses for the entire year or a majority of the months in a year invalidate or override our zoning code? And here I'm going to mention that the trustees qualifies for Dover Amendment protection. Under Chapter 40A, Section 3, the Dover Amendment provides that zoning bylaws cannot regulate or restrict educational uses. NOMCAG is, their nonprofit status is based on education. So that's the legal.
Concerts and weddings are not applicable to the Dover Amendment. And also, by the way, traffic and public safety issues are not applicable. That has to do specifically with zoning around educational activities. And I would recommend in the future that if we're going to start getting into the deep weeds of law, that we should ask our town council to be present at some of these meetings, as they used to when Raymond Irish was town council. You know, I think
Patrick, please wait to be recognized. We will get to consideration. We will get to consideration. So that is basically what Tom has supplied to us.
Point of order, Roxanne, you just made a comment. I was reacting to your comment. You don't get to make comments and then try to shut down me and Chuck. That is ridiculous.
Nobody's going to shut you down. We're going to deliberate at length, I'm sure.
Real quick comment.
Yes. Please identify yourself, Tom.
I shall. Tom is on 39 Church Street. I just want to say that I submitted these questions in writing to save time for the board and to make deliberation easier. I do apologize for the error in the number of concerts. That has varied over the years. When I first started coming in here, meeting with Brian, it was, I think, 19 a year. There were individual permits, which does have some merit being individual permits. We never really have these kind of problems until you went to the annual permits. Also, I would like some clarification from Brian. If is non-key, I understand now it's an educational institution, but is it also an art museum? Are you an art museum? Is that, or no, it's a historic home, correct? So that's an important point because the licenses that you have for food and other things, basic which I have here, they only apply to art museums. They're only available to art museums. Stockbridge recognizes two different categories in the table of use tables. The first is a museum and the second is an art museum. Only art museums are eligible for section 6.13, which is what they have their restaurant license in. Just making the point. But anyway, I want to thank you all. I hope this made things easier. And I'm trying to limit my comments today. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Now, we've received a number of letters, emails, conversations, phone calls in support of NOMCAG and specifically winter lights. And I'm just going to read one that was specifically asked to be read into the record, and another that I think is very representative. But we have heard from businesses, we have heard from the Chamber of Commerce, and we've heard obviously from individual residents. So I will read in, this comes from Michael Abdallah of Michael's Restaurant in Stockbridge. He wrote us an email, just want to let the select board know that both the pumpkins and the lights at NOMCAG have been a huge success here at Michael's. The business that they have brought in the months of October through December have been staggering. The first year they did the lights, December numbers were almost the same as July. Biggest month of December in our history of 40 years. Also, the parking on Main Street was a fantastic idea. It makes the town look alive after 4 p.m., makes people wonder what's going on and maybe stop and look. I am in full support of NOMCAG's entertainment for the pumpkins and Christmas lights. Could you please read this at the meeting? So you've done so. And the next one is representative in general of various residents, and this happens to not necessarily be, it's a past Stockbridge resident, and it comes from Celia de Gersdorf Kittredge. Dear Selectmen, as a cousin of the late Mabel Choate, I am very upset by the lack of appreciation of all she did for the town. She wanted her beloved home, NOMCAG, keg to be held in trust by the trustees of reservations for the people of Stockbridge and others to enjoy. The winter lights have been a huge pleasure to all who take the walk, which is exactly what would have fulfilled her wishes and hopes for all of us. The lights are only on for a few weeks over Christmas and it is not excessive, and the picketing against them is appalling. Brian Cruey and his team have done an amazing job in giving so much pleasure to so many, and those beautiful lights must continue now and in the future. Sincerely, Celia de Gersdorf Kittredge. So that being said, do we have any other members of the public in the room at the moment who would like to comment? Charlie, could you come up and identify yourself?
I'm Charles Kenny, 5 Meadow Road. First of all, as chair of the Tri-Town Health Department, I'd like to thank the not-for-profits for their cooperation for the last stressful period that we've gone through. And to be fair, I'd also like to thank the residents of the town for their cooperation. I see this as a Shakespearean moment for the board. The town of Stockbridge is a special town. We all know that. It's a beautiful place when you come into it. It's heaven when you live here. And any person who has a commercial interest realizes what a fruit this is on the tree to pick. Historically, the select boards have kept Stockbridge this way because they've been fierce defenders of the intrinsic nature of Stockbridge. The problem of an individual, we have the Botanical Gardens license, we have the non-keg license. These problems, when you look at them individually, seem to be single problems with each with their own issue. But every neighborhood in Stockbridge virtually is affected by a not-for-profit. I've seen over the last almost half century an evolution of the not-for-profits from being what I originally thought were wonderful artistic, historic credentials for the town and attractions for the community to become potential entertainment destinations like Disney World. And in fact, if you united all of the not-for-profits, if you got one person with an MBA to do this, you could probably unite all the not-for-profits as not-for-profit world in Stockbridge and have huge followings. What we have to do here is, and what I think the select board needs to do, is to get a central theme to manage the valuable aspects of these not-for-profits, the wonderful contributions they make to our town with what the residents see as destruction of their neighborhoods. And I think the theme needs to cover all of these places. It can't be specific for a given place. A friend of mine in town told me something that I thought was a uniting theme. I respect her opinion a lot. And this is that these not-for-profits should be held to the standard of continuing the original mandate that they have. Now, I can understand that when somebody takes over a not-for-profit and they have an MBA, that they're going to try to turn it into a business. I don't think that correct me, I haven't investigated this. I doubt that most of the not-for-profits had as their original mandate the idea of becoming a successful business. The idea here is go back to the original mandate. You as a select board can enter Stockbridge history and become the fiercest defenders in one of the toughest times. This coronavirus has put a lot of stress on the finances of all of these enterprises and historic places. It's going to end. We're going to normalize. The coronavirus will be a thing of the past. Let's not make mistakes based on the stress of this particular period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Anyone else in the room? Harold?
I really get upset when I look at what non-pay was, how they butchered it up to be today. Used to be the terrace gardens, now a parking lot. You now have a greenhouse operation, a commercial greenhouse operation. The barnyard's gone, the equipment shed's gone. What you call the farm driveway. Up until the trustees took it over, that was always known locally as Choate's Lane. It was a maintained property. It had nice fences along it, had oak trees. And at night, we'd always hear the owls up there hooting in the trees. It was always pleasant. And it's just, you put in Angus cows, which are not good in a residential area because they notoriously have bad attitudes. And you have enough acreage there in the pasture for 4 cows. You had 15 this year.
Harold?
Yeah.
I'm going to remind you, we're here to hear comments about the annual entertainment license.
Sometimes, quite often you have food at these events. After you guys are closed up at night, probably about 2 hours later, the whole neighborhood is echoing with the sounds of coyotes up there cleaning up the food that's been tossed in the bushes or whatever. It's just not right. The amount of traffic has gotten terrible.
Thank you, Harold. Anyone else in the room? Shelby? Please identify yourself.
I'm Shelby Marshall. I live on Cherry Hill Road. I understand people's concern about the kinds of things that NOMCAG does or the Berkshire Botanic Garden does as being different from what they used to do. This is part of the evolution of the museum and historic home scene across the country. It's not sustainable for museums and historic homes to keep on doing what they started doing 60 years ago. They cannot stay alive. It's not about being in business, it's about actually operating. You think about how much money NOMCAG had to raise to redo their gardens and reshingle the house and all that, and redo the roof. That's not going to come from the kind of visitation that they used to get. So, you can't just say, well, they should raise money from donors. Also, as the letter from the Choate family person said, this is an amazing property and it's open to the public, and we love 40,000 people a year love going there. So we need to balance the issues around neighbor inconveniences and disruption with the greater public and with the institution itself. And I don't think that it's up to everybody else to decide what's an appropriate kind of activity for NOMCAG to undertake. It's any more than it's up to us to decide what kinds of concerts or activities Tanglewood should have in the Lindy Center. That's not what we're here for. Lots and lots of people love going to NOMCAG, and the fact that NOMCAG has come up with ways to get people to come back over and over again is really pretty marvelous, because historic houses, being that they're not art museums, they can't say, oh, come back in 4 months, we're going to have a new exhibit. You don't have a new exhibit. It's the same house over and over again. So the only thing you can do new is events. So I think that really it's up to us to determine how can we help NOMCAG manage the events so that they are not disruptive to the neighbors and still allow them to do things that are really good for them and good for a whole lot of other people in town as well as outside of town. So, managing traffic patterns, dealing with music, if that, amplified music, if that's an issue. These are things that I think make sense for us to work on together. But to say it's not appropriate for NOMCAG to hold events, honestly, it's ridiculous. For one thing, it's not appropriate for members of the public to say what's appropriate for NOMCAG to do as an institution in terms of their mission. It's not my business to say, you're not living up to your mission. It's your board decision, the place to say whether you're living up to your mission. It's our place to say, are the things that they're actually doing good or bad or indifferent to the people who have a stake in that actual impact? And I'm sure we can find ways to deal with traffic to deal with the sound levels and that kind of thing. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Louise Gachet, 39 Church Street. I would simply say this. There are a lot of things that I would like to do to make money that I cannot do on my property because of the existing zoning. And I'd like to know if the zoning applies only to the people who live in this town and own houses in this town in residential areas and pay taxes, or if the zoning applies to all people in the residential zoning, no matter what their institution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One quick comment,
All right, Tom, please make it brief.
and it's to the point. So one of the things that I know that you can regulate with an annual entertainment license is the extent of events. And right now in town, we have Marian weekends, which everyone here knows is fairly strict. It goes on for 3 days. So non-key between October and January has events that go on for like 63 days. Like non-key month-long events, I think are just way too much for a fundraiser. There's a lot of the tail wagging the dog going on here. Supposedly it's all in aid of fundraising for the museum, whereas the museum has become a very small part of the operation. And I think there needs to be some balance restored on that. That, you know, that there shouldn't be, 100 days of fundraising and 80,000 people coming in for fundraising events and 11,000 people coming in, according to the TTR website, for the museum. And the museum itself, I understand now, is free to members of the trustees. So it's kind of a loss leader now. It's been relegated to that position. So, it seems to me that there needs to be a shortening of this period of the winter lights, etc. A month. Someone made a comment to me, they said, when we were picketing, by the way, that it was only 2 months, get over yourselves. Well, 2 months, they don't really endure 2 months of disturbance in their neighborhoods. So it was very nice. And I noticed that most of the people who speak so passionately for non-key live several miles away. So so I would just say, I would encourage you to limit the duration of these, or else maybe ask the Marians to have 2-month weekends and see if the town likes that.
I
Point
have some
taken.
questions for Tom.
Thank you.
I have some questions for Tom before he goes
Fire
on.
away.
So you say limit the number of days. What do you feel? What's your personal opinion about what that limit should be?
Well, I mean.
And let's specifically talk about the light festivals.
The which?
The outdoor festival, the lights.
The winter lights. Well, that's really up to the board. But
I understand it as I'm asking your opinion.
But well, my opinion is that the whole production is illegal. But that's my opinion. I hear people say, I like it. I think it's good for the town, right? But that's not what's at issue here. What's at issue is, does our zoning code provide the legal protections it's supposed to, right? I don't think it does right now. I think there's been spot zoning by license on behalf of non-key and the other nonprofits I might have. If you enforce the law, 2 weeks ago, there was a tag sale on our street. The woman had gotten a permit a month before because she was a professional, but it hadn't been entered into the logbook down here. So the police came around, they took down all their signs, walked in the middle of the sale in front of all the customers and shut it down. And this woman was quite embarrassed by this. Then they didn't put the signs back. The people had to go out and put their signs out again. So laws like that are enforced on the everyday people in this town.
All right. Tom, we need to stick to the issue of the annual entertainment license. And could you please wrap it up quickly?
Huh?
We're running
I know.
quite long on time.
Non-King, on the other hand, they willy-nilly put out signs if they feel they need to. Nobody says anything. Nobody takes down their signs. And I would like you to enforce the law. That's all I'm asking. It's not a matter of opinion. It's not a
Your
referendum.
question about the law will be addressed when we're deliberating.
Very good. And do bear in mind what I said about the designation of non-King as an art museum, because their licenses depend on that. And Brian himself said they are not an art museum, just so you know.
All right, do we have anyone from the public? We have more in the room? Yes, could you come up and identify yourself, please?
My name is Ann Skakel. I live at 20 Church Street. I've been a resident here in Stockbridge for over 30 years. I used to live on Main Street, and I just want to say I'm speaking in favor of NOMCAG. I absolutely love looking up at the winter lights. I miss them on Monday and Tuesday when they're shut off, but it brings such joy and happiness, and I would not change it. And I want to just address that I have been a member of the trustees as well, but thank you, Brian Cruey.
Thank you. Did I see another hand up in the room? No? Anyone in the Zoom audience?
I have a few questions for Brian before we close the hearing.
Anita.
We can ask during deliberation.
Anita.
Anita.
Thank you.
Anita, did you identify
Thank you.
yourself, Anita, please?
Yes, Anita Schwerner. And I don't live exactly by Namke, but 2 weeks ago, I took a walk with a number of people up Church Street to see what's actually going on there. And it seems to me that one of the major problems is just the traffic pattern, the change in the traffic pattern. The buses coming down Church Street going up to Namke and then exiting from Namke onto Church Street. The headlights of the buses are shining directly into homes of residents when they come down. And it doesn't matter when they reverse the exit and the entrance. So it just goes in a different person's home. And that in itself is very disturbing. I would hate that. And the traffic, also a number of the streetlights were out, but that's a different story. It seemed like when the pattern was going up Prospect, and using Eden Hill or whatever and turning around on Prospect Hill, there wasn't as much disruption to the neighborhood, at least from the traffic. And that's one of the things that I think needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Anyone else, Michael?
Matthew Chester has his hand up.
We have a Matthew Chester.
Hi, everyone. Matthew Chester. I live at 5 Church Street. So I'm a new neighbor, although, resident of Stockbridge for a while. I'm a new neighbor to NOMCAG and also have small children. And I just want to fully support NOMCAG and their efforts. And second, what was said by many others, but Shelby Marshall, I think, did a good job of it. I'll try to hit my points quickly because I know we don't have a lot of time. I think there's a lot of talk about sort of business versus nonprofit. Every organization has to make their numbers, right? Their income and their expenses have to match. And sometimes that can come with donors or sometimes it can come with events. But sort of the idea that fundraising is different from, every organization fundraises in one way or another. It could be from selling products or otherwise. So there's somehow this dichotomy that, business is for profit and nonprofit is nonprofit. They still have to hit zero at the end of the day. As a neighbor, I've had, my second point as a neighbor, we've had no problems with the traffic. It seems much lighter because of the buses than in years past. My kids look out at the buses and it's funny because my daughter will sit at the window and watch and wait for a bus. And sometimes minutes and minutes will go by, maybe 10 or 15 minutes before a bus even shows up. And there may be 3 buses, but they don't seem very, frequent enough to really bother anyone. They certainly don't bother us. In terms of the signs, the point that they can kind of put signs wherever. When I'm walking Church Street, all the signs that I've seen that have been put up have been helpful signs to avoid both people that are visiting Namkeg from driving in, but also that they don't pull down, different, like Yale Court or something like that. So I think the signs that are put out were ones that, the neighbors wanted to prevent people from disrupting their neighborhood. In terms of I also want to mention that I know Namkeg and Brian in particular has been very helpful in terms of trying to help the town as a whole. We want people to be attracted to come here and visit our businesses. And so moving things to Main Street, I think was a brilliant idea to make it more vibrant. I mean, most of the time people ask me where to go, to have dinner or something like that. It's, a lot of the town's dead by the end of the day. And if we have more people here, then the businesses can survive more easily because they have people and, an active, lively area to go later in the evening. And then the last point I just wanted to make was sort of, I think there's this idea of, well, it's too many days or it's too many people. I think Brian made this point, but I just want to reiterate, it can't kind of be both ways. There are people that want to visit this. I know many people who couldn't get tickets because it's sold out. And I think, the trustees have very thoughtfully said, well, let's reduce the numbers and have a certain number of days that maybe is a little bit longer. So we have reduced numbers each day, but a lot of people want to go to this. And if you reduce the days, I'm sure now, Namkeg will come back and say, well, then we need to reduce the numbers to make it, increase the numbers to make it work. So you can't have it both ways. It's one or the other. The number of days has not bothered me in the slightest. Every time we walk up there, it's been just an enjoyable experience to even just walk by. And certainly from a sound perspective, we've had, even when I'm walking along the Pine Drive, we cannot hear the music until, you have to literally be in the event pretty much to hear anything. So certainly the sound is not, we've experienced no sound issues at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, we have Gary Pittman.
Gary, could you announce who you are? And let everyone know. Gary?
You're muted, maybe?
You're muted, Gary.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
No.
He's unmuted on Zoom, but I'm not sure if his mic's picking him up.
There's an issue with your microphone, Gary.
Yeah. Is your microphone on? You're muted again.
All right, he's
There you
unmuted.
go. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Can you type in a comment, please?
Gary, can you make your comments in chat? Can you?
Or you can call my phone. I'll put you on speaker if you want.
Well, cannot, no.
He can call into the meeting by the call numbers on his phone.
Right. You can use your phone to come on. Try that, or try reconnecting to the meeting, or you could use the chat function. Can you hear me, Gary? Just shake your head, yes or no. Okay. All right, well, we'll wait for you, Gary. If you come back in and we can hear you, I will recognize you again. Do we have someone else waiting?
No other hand, other than chief.
We have someone, oh,
Can I make a rebuttal to the comments made about that tag sale and RX and stuff?
No.
no,
Okay.
sorry. Well, we'll give Gary a minute and see if he comes back in. So why don't we take a 5-minute recess? So we will resume at, let's say,
9:30.
9:30.
Okay, then.
All right. It's 9:31. I'm going to call the Stockbridge Select Board meeting back into order. Gary Pitney, are you able to communicate with us yet?
He has no microphone. He's not.
No microphone.
I would suggest again that he call one of our phones. It's the easiest way.
Well, he can chat and if we can read.
Why can't he
what
call a
has.
phone? I mean, come on. Put him on speaker. I want to hear him.
Please. We have anybody
Nope.
writing in?
No one.
No? I don't even know if he's, here he is.
There he is.
No microphone.
Chat, okay.
All right. If he wants to send the message, or like I said, he can, we do it
Yeah,
by
just-
numbers too.
Go ahead and write in your comment, Gary. And Michael will read it.
I haven't received anything yet.
Nothing? Getting anything?
Nope, when it comes up, it'll come up, it'll pop up. I don't think there's anybody else that's,
Yeah.
There's one trouble with Zoom.
yeah.
Gary, if you can hear me, you could always get in your car and be here in 3 minutes.
All right.
Call, oh my God.
I would just like to point out that a taxpayer and a butter, our rights should be held in equal or higher than a majority of the nonprofits, especially the trustees who do not monetarily support the town services that they enjoy. Furthermore, NOMCAG should not have amplified music at their events limited. I would just like to point out that as it's the same one again. All right. So that's what he said. Furthermore, should not be having amplified music at their events.
Okay. All right, thank you, Gary.
On Emma Skakel.
Do we have Emma Skakel? Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, my name is Emma. I was actually born on Main Street, Stockbridge, and I've lived most of my life in the Berkshires. I'm actually currently in New York City, but my parents live on 20 Church Street. I have to say that NOMCAG has been one of the greatest pride and joys of the Berkshires for me personally, growing up there. It is a place that I went to in the summertime that I couldn't wait for my mom to take me to there. And the fact that it closed in the summer was just devastating for me as a kid. And now that Brian Crewy has come in and has given it life again during the winter and the fall is amazing and something that I think adds to the community and for all kids and residents. The fact that my parents live on 20 Church Street, we can see the lights, we can hear what's going on. It doesn't bother us at all. Actually, I'm very excited to come home on the weekends to see the lights, and I'm really sad when they're out. And as for the concerts, it's actually really sad because we can't hear the concerts. And when they were outside on the weekends, we would sit on our back deck to strain to hear it. And you have to actually walk up to hear anything that's going on, especially the music that's playing during the winter lights. As someone before me pointed out, you have to be in, literally in on the property to be hearing what's going on. So basically all I have to say is that I understand people's complaints and what they're saying about NOMCAG, but if you have ever been to the winter lights and seen the joy that it's given to children and to families, I feel like you would think differently about these complaints, because what NOMCAG brings to the community outweighs whatever small discomfort you have with the lights or any small sound. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else weighing in?
There are no other hands up at this point.
Okay. So hearing none, I move that we close the evidentiary portion of the hearing for deliberation of the board. Do I have a second?
Second.
I would like
All
to
those
talk
in
to
favor?
Brian before we close the hearing. I have a couple of questions for him. And I don't think it's
Yes,
appropriate for him to
questions
get to
while we're
speak and
deliberating.
people not to be able to respond.
Excuse me, I'm speaking.
I
Michael,
was actually speaking, Roxanne.
you were not identified.
So right now they can present, right now is collecting all the information for the board. If during deliberations, you're just asking for clarification,
Okay.
you
Are
can
you
do that
talking
during the
clarification
part.
here?
Are you talking about clarification? Do you have questions that you just want?
I wanted, I want to know about whether there's amplified music at certain types of events. I just feel like there's more information.
Yeah,
That's clarification. Clarification, we do that in deliberation.
All right, Roxanne.
So we're voting. Chuck and I have voted to close.
Well, good, then you got a majority right there.
Okay, so now we're in deliberation. Now you can ask your question.
Brian, is there amplified music at the pumpkin lights and the winter lights?
Should I?
Yes, you gotta go.
Yeah, come on up.
So we have, what really, there's no music at the pumpkin show at all. And then at Winter Lights, we do have, really a soundtrack that plays at different points. That is, just a couple of small speakers and, an SD card plugged in that just plays, the music that we selected for that section.
And do you feel like the amplified music is mission critical to the event?
Yes, I do think that it really adds to the enjoyment of it.
If there was an amplified music, do you think it would impact the event? Impact the attendance of the event?
No, I don't. Okay. I don't think so, but I also don't think that is a problem for this event, that I've heard from other people. It's, you really have to be in the event to hear that music, during this. It's
Not true. Not true.
right. So it's
Just the clarification, just state yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, Brian.
Sure.
Okay. Chuck, your comments?
Not at this point. Let me give it some thought.
Okay. All righty. My one observation, we understand some of the concerns here. On the other hand, I think there is some confusion that I think Matt pointed out when he spoke about the ability of nonprofits to be able to generate revenue that does not make them a commercial business. And I've spoken to town council, and basically the courts have been very generous in ruling that commercial operations that generate to support a qualifying nonprofit they're in support. And it supports the nonprofit's mission. In other words, they are allowed to do that. That does not make them a commercial operation. And if you go to any museum, you will find that they might have food available. They may have a gift shop. They may do any number of different things that we think of, as just typical citizens as commercial, but it's really serving to keep them viable and generate income. And clearly NOMCAG has been resurrected. The roof has been redone. It's in excellent shape. The upkeep of the gardens is obvious to everyone, I think. So the major complaints that we have heard lately is worrying about the expansion of nonprofits and how invasive or intrusive the neighborhoods feel they are. But what we have to stick to is the law. And basically under section 183A, we only have three things that we can consider. We need to protect employees, patrons, and members of the public inside or outside the premises from disruptive conduct, from criminal activity, or from health, safety, or fire hazards. Number two, prevent an unreasonable increase in the level of noise in the area caused by the licensed activity or caused by patrons entering or leaving the premises. And number three, Prevent unreasonable increase, I'm missing part of this, in the level of, yeah, here it is, in the level of noise in the area in which the premises, disruptive conduct, oh, and unreasonably increasing pedestrian traffic in the area in which the premises are located. Or vehicular activities. So it is up to us to base on one of those three. Now, obviously, we can put some conditions, but the main concerns that we've heard and main complaints are not necessarily noise. I know from my own experience, I don't hear anything when I'm out on the street. I know that when I'm on the property and I'm fairly close to the music, but even being on the property and not close to the music, you don't really hear it very much. You kind of have to strain. Patrick?
Just a point of clarification. Every nonprofit is a corporation. It's a 501c3 corporation. Every nonprofit files tax returns. Every nonprofit has a business. This whole discussion of commercial business is frankly just not correct as to how nonprofits are organized as institutions. I think that, to somehow create this like false discussion around whether or not they are a for-profit corporation or a nonprofit corporation is not relevant to the question at hand. A for-profit corporation can apply for an entertainment license the same way that a nonprofit corporation can. I just wanted to clarify that. Now, I would go back to the proposal that I suggested from Botanical Garden, which is that we condition this on the number of events per year. I think that's reasonable. I also think that we have had at least some pushback on the audio, the amplified music. And I think that, that is another area that we could condition. Other than that, that's pretty much what I got to say.
All right, well, I have a question for Brian. Can you clarify how many musical events you're talking about having?
So last year we had, I believe, 6 Thursday night concerts in the garden. And again, that's a dramatic reduction in what we have had in the past. And we have moved those, around the property. So, with feedback from our neighbors where they can hear it the least. And then we had 3 tea parties in the Chinese garden, which also had some amplified music. And then there's also the Nom Cave Garden Party, which takes place the last Saturday in July and is, featured Wanda Houston this year.
Okay, and the first one, you said how many per year? 5, the music?
Last year we had 6.
There were 6? Okay.
But there's also some amplified music at Winter Lights and at Winter Lights.
Again, it's just really a soundtrack. It is not
amplification, not the source of the music.
Yes, but it's not. There's no band. There's no performance. It is just really a playlist. That we do our best to control.
Okay. Now, and my understanding is, in terms of the complaints that we've had this year, in terms of the traffic flow, you did mitigate because you did reverse the flow. We have not heard from anyone down the street in terms of headlights coming into their home. So unfortunately, Mr. LaBelle is the only one that has complained about that specific complaint. And there has been discussion. We've had discussion about your upper driveway, that you have a second farther northernmost driveway that you could repair. And there's some discussion about, is it feasible for you, for the shuttle bus routes, to utilize Prospect Hill Road in terms of coming in and exiting the property on Prospect Hill?
Yes, and that is something that's under construction right now. We're rebuilding the retaining wall along that north entrance and trying to regrade the road so that we can get vehicles safely onto Prospect Hill Road. Right now, the drop is just too much. And if it interests you, I do know really the average number of buses entering the property on any given day, just to address the traffic. Is we have 3 20-person buses, so these are small buses. And over the past weekend, we timed when they came into the property, and it was about 1 bus every 5.5 minutes. So that is less than 12 vehicles entering and exiting the property in an hour.
Okay.
And we've tried this new traffic pattern because it's really, public safety is our #1 concern. Prospect Hill Road, it's very dark up there. There's not truly a safe place for the bus to turn around. And, as it stood now, we can't have that type of traffic without our pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic intersecting. So it was really a way to separate the two and make sure that we were minimizing the risk. It's dark, there's kids. That was our primary concern for this action this year.
Okay, thank you. You have any questions, Chuck?
No, I'm good.
You good? All right, thank you, Brian. Well, I think the biggest concern and most of what we've heard about is the shuttle buses. And it is up to this board to determine whether or not we think that's an unreasonable amount of traffic. My observation is that we're talking, this is Route 102. This is a major artery into town from the west. I live on 102. I live right up the road. And I don't see that number of buses entering and exiting the Nomkeg property as being an unreasonable amount of traffic. How do you feel about that, Chuck?
Yeah, I agree with that.
You agree? How about you?
I have no problem with the traffic.
Pardon me?
I think that the traffic's been reduced due to Michael's good work. I'm fine with it.
Okay. So, Patrick? So you want to propose that there be no amplified music? Is that?
I didn't say, and no, I think that we should permit a certain number of outdoor amplified events a year. And fewer than a certain number. And I think we should have I think we should have some consistency in our policies for for nonprofits who are non-primarily concert oriented, in terms of their mission.
Right. However, that's not one of the 3 criteria on which we can actually rule. And it's questionable to me how much we can actually
I
limit
don't think you can limit. I
the
think you
number of
can.
events.
Right, the key thing is if you find something that's happening up there is unreasonable, then you can take the
Right.
unreasonable. So based on the evidence that was presented to us today, for example, in the case of amplified music, I think we really I don't recall hearing anybody specifically about the level of amplified music. So if the board doesn't determine it's unreasonable and it hasn't been produced as evidence, then it's something that should not be considered.
I believe Tom addressed amplified music in his both written and oral comments. So it was entered into the record.
You think it's unreasonable what they're doing up there, and if it is, based on the evidence you've received, then you can.
I think if they did 365 nights a year, it would be unreasonable. And that's all I'm saying is let's try to figure out a way to bring the community together by putting some guardrails on the number of these types of events we can have. I don't care what they are, whether they're weddings, whether they're cocktail parties, whether they're, winter lights. If they've got a speaker, they're amplified. And I just think we can put some limits and let them figure out how to run their business based on those limits.
Chuck?
I don't know legally we can do that. I have to find out from town council on that first.
Right.
Do what now?
I don't know if we can legally limit the number of events.
You just banned them from the Botanical Garden.
No, we didn't limit their number of events.
Based on the evidence presented, you guys voted to eliminate amplified music based on the sound complaints that were directly received.
Yeah.
You can limit the number of shows if you think things like traffic patterns and other stuff create hazards.
Right.
And you can limit the entertainment licenses. So you need to state like how many and what your reason is behind it based on the evidence you've received. Why are you putting the condition on it?
But it has to be within those three parameters. in the-
It's, I think I think if we get up to 60, 80, 100 amplified music events a year, it is unreasonable.
There you go.
That's my position.
Well, we're not
Right,
there
so
yet.
but
We're not there.
that is a reasonable statement to make, and then whether or not the board feels that way is something you could take in, so.
And I think that I'm not looking, yeah, I think it's a relatively, on Winter Lights, I think it's a relatively small concession to not play as I believe one of the letters referred to as the Muzak track. And I think that for the larger events, that could be weddings, could be outdoor concerts, I think that something like 10 or 15 events a year is a reasonable limit to apply that allows them to do some fundraising, but that doesn't overly stress the community. And I think we got to look for compromise, guys, or else we're going to have the same fight.
I think that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's my proposal then.
I would make the motion, put on the same line as Botanical Gardens, that there's no amplified music outdoors. That takes care of all that issue. If they have 10 or 20, there's no amplified music outside.
But then that shuts down like a whole number, a whole class of events that they're currently doing.
No, they can turn the music down a little bit on there and
Not turn it down, amplified is plugged in.
Yeah, they're only using amplified music and they're not using, they're not having bands with speakers. They, basically have a soundtrack and they're running that. I mean, I'm kind of loath to say, I don't know what kind of music you're showing for Winter Lights, but I'm loath to say that someone can't be playing any kind of Christmas music during the holiday season. So.
It's outdoors. That's, I think, what the issue is for the butters. I mean, honestly, I was at Winter Lights already. It's gorgeous, but you go there because of the lights.
In terms of volume of complaints, we have, as far as I know, only one complaint. We have one household that's complaining about music from Namkek. Tom's main thrust, his main concern was that traffic and the headlights coming into his house. I don't know that that is his main concern. And certainly it's very dissimilar to the Botanical Garden and where you have all the surrounding homes are being affected. So there is a difference here. And there's also a difference in the size of the property and the proximity to homes. So I'm not concerned about that, but.
One is around 30 acres, the other's around 40 acres, I think. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
but
okay.
based on where they're doing it, they're split between two sides of the road. Here we have one contiguous piece of property, very different. Well, Brian, I mean, how much do you think that would negatively impact your events? To not have any music outdoors, any amplified music? Obviously acoustic would be acceptable.
I think, that would negatively impact, our events, I think.
Which types of events?
Well, certainly our concerts, there are certain pieces of equipment that bands have that you have to amplify to be able to hear them. That includes microphones for people that are singing. You cannot hear someone's voice in a large outdoor space if you do not have some sort of amplification. Again, we don't have amplified music at the Pumpkin Show, at Winter Lights. I think there's a real difference in the time of year as well. This is not when people have their windows, and climate change is maybe changing that a little bit, but this is not a time of year when people have their windows open or are spending a great deal of time after 4:30, outside. And again, we really tried hard to make sure that volume of music is low, not just for, our neighbors, but when you walk through the event, you don't want that sound bleeding into other areas. So it's very focused on, and directed towards different, just very isolated spots. So, I do think it adds a lot to the event, there are certain lights that we have that are, kind of, tie into the music or areas. So, I would not like to see that in there. I think it would be detrimental. It would have a negative impact for sure.
Okay, so for this particular application, you're talking about doing 6 Thursdays, did you say?
Yes.
With music.
3 tea
outdoors.
parties.
3 tea parties, again, you're doing the tea parties.
And then some weddings. How many weddings?
And
do
the
you
garden, no, there's
They
no
don't do
outdoor.
weddings, they stop weddings.
And the one garden
No,
party.
stop wedding receptions.
What's that?
You just stop wedding receptions. You do have ceremonies, which are just,
We have what we call mini-monies, which are small, just ceremonies there, and sometimes, and they are not amplified, but they will have a small, trio or something playing during that, and it's usually 50 people or less, just the ceremony, no reception.
Do they use a microphone?
Depending, on, where it's at, again.
Just to clarify though, I mean, if they're using a microphone, it is amplified. I mean, look at, let's just kind of,
Sure, but these, it's, again, you have to be heard,
I'm not debating that, I'm not even opposed to it. I just don't want to misrepresent
You
it.
should be just clarifying things, not getting into debates on hearing.
And I'll be very open, we use that amplification, it's the 6 concerts, it's, the tea parties that we have at the Chinese garden.
Which is walled.
And really, does a good job of containing the sound. And at our Namkig garden party.
That's just an annual event.
Yes.
So we're not talking that many days here. We're talking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
No,
Plus, winter lights.
Plus the mini monies, however many days that is.
Pardon me?
Plus the mini monies, however many days that is.
I think we had last year 5 mini monies on property, but again, these were.
Right, but you're not playing music.
No.
You just said they were.
We're not amplifying that music, it's
Right,
not.
it's not amplified
You
music.
just said that the singer uses a microphone. It is amplified.
Yes, that is, when there are, yes, there is minimal amplification, for some of those things, when voices need to be heard.
I would propose that we limit it then to 15 amplified events outdoors a year. That covers what is the current businesses, that doesn't allow giant expansion, and that gives us, a way forward that I don't believe will impact the bottom line of his numbers.
But it does preclude them from using any amplified music at all during winter lights.
Yeah, well, he doesn't, the pumpkin lights don't use it. I don't think it's the end of the world if people don't hear, walking in the winter wonderland, as they're walking through and looking at the lights. That's just my personal opinion, but.
I don't agree with that, but I don't agree with that personally. Okay.
You don't agree with what?
Not having the music at the lights.
You think there should be music at the
It's
lights?
part of the,
You could
Yeah.
allow
Part
it
of
at
the
that
thing.
specific event.
I would,
Allow-
I would be inclined to allow it. And then plus a limit of 15 other amplified events.
Super.
And actually, if you consider winter lights an event, even though it lasts for multiple days,
it's one event.
it's still one event.
That's what we do with the BTF.
So
and
you're
everything
still
else.
within 15.
No, you're doing 75 nights now instead of 15.
They're not
No.
e-
Well,
separate
we do
events. It's one
we do a
event.
BTF, one
one
play that runs for a month is one event. They don't come in every
They're
day.
not playing them in the parking lot.
No, but an event is an event. So an event could be a play that runs for 2 weeks.
I think that we're splitting hairs here. We're talking about the impact on the neighborhood and, look at it. We can just permit it. I have no problem with that. But I was searching for a way to compromise and to give some relief. I think that the music at Winter Lights is of all the things we're talking about, the least impactful to his bottom line, which I care about because I really like that use and all that they bring to the town.
Winter Lights represents how much of your annual revenue, Brian? What percentage?
At this point, about half.
So it's 50% of their annual revenue.
That's right. That's why I don't.
By Winter Lights.
Right.
Well, I mean, why don't, if you want to make a motion, you suggested making a motion basically that we limit it to 15 amplified events. However, you need to understand that an event is
15 nights
an
of
event.
amplified music then. I would make a motion that we limit it to 15 nights of amplified music. And he can use it however he likes.
No,
I'm not gonna say that.
no.
That's too limitation. That's way too much of a limitation. I
Yeah.
think we're
I
going
think so,
beyond
too.
our,
So, Well, I will go ahead and make a motion that we then just place one condition on this annual permit for NOMCAG, and that we limit it, the amplified music usage to 15 events, and that Winter Lights is an event. Pumpkin Walk is an event. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Is this the whole entertainment
Aye.
license or your motion on the condition?
I'm moving that we approve this application with the one condition that amplified music is limited to 15 events.
A point of order. Can we vote on the condition first and then on the on entertainment license?
Yes.
All right, I move that we place a condition on this annual entertainment license to limit amplified music out of doors to 15 events.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I'm not in favor of that, so you can, I'm a nay. Yeah.
All right.
Now we can vote on the
All right,
entertainment license.
condition passes. So now, Chuck, do you want to go ahead and make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we grant the entertainment license with the conditions just voted on of 15 amplified outside events with the pumpkin and the lights as one event.
Oh, we just have approved the condition.
You approve it.
I'll make a motion, we approve the entertainment license with condition.
Yes.
And that's part of the conditions. I'll make that motion.
All right, I'm confused as well.
I'll make the motion that we accept the entertainment license
With that condition.
with the conditions just voting on.
Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, what's next? Culvert grant program, what is that exactly?
So that was gonna be Allison Dixon updating us on the culvert, but she had to go because of the length, so we will reschedule that.
Okay, so we'll be
That's a quick- that one's done.
scheduling culvert grant. Glendale Fire Station pad installation is up next. Vinnie,
Would you like me to read the letter that was submitted?
oh, you can.
Or you have the letter and could accept it.
No.
All right,
I
well,
was
let's,
just wondering,
I'd make a motion, we continue this.
the motion to continue it too until we got the neighbors.
That's right.
I know it's,
yeah.
what we gotta say, but I think it would be this,
I agree.
the worms that we need to open.
All right. All right, so let's reschedule.
And she really
Sorry,
wanted to
honey.
speak and she got up.
Sorry, 2 hours.
All right, so we're
I'll make a motion to
rescheduling.
continue this to a January meeting.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Let's just put it on the first one in
I took
January.
this
then.
First one in January. Yep,
So,
Do you know what date that will be?
January 13th. It'll be an evening meeting.
An evening meeting?
Yep, we'll resend out notification.
Okay. So next up is easy, I think, I'm hoping.
I think if Judith is on.
We have Judith Roberts.
You and I, yes.
She's on, I'm not sure.
Can you hear me?
yeah,
Oh,
there you
there you
are.
are. Hi.
There, we can see you too.
Okay. So would you like to speak to the change that you are making to your existing special permit?
Yeah, so what ended up happening is I had a builder who said that he could, you had given me permission to extend out the right side of my building, the existing 8 feet that my porch was. Well, what the builder neglected to tell me was there was a post that holds up the staircase, that holds up the second floor. And if he takes that out, he's going to triple my costs, which is, you know, I've got a little cottage and the cost of the renovation almost exceeds the price of the cottage. So, you know, I was like, well, that's kind of ridiculous. So I went back to the drawing board with a different architect. And what they were suggesting, I don't know if you can see in the diagram, is, and my diagram is kind of drawn, the writing on it is flipped. So I would only be using like the back, I would still be using that that same 8 feet, but only towards the back of the house, and extend it all the way to the end of the existing, where the end of the existing porches. So I was gonna make a little L. The total lot coverage will actually go down slightly because this addition is going to be slightly smaller than the existing. The previous lot coverage was without the back porch was 5.2%, and with it was 6.4%, and this would be 5.1% without the porch and 6.22% with the porch. Essentially, I'm staying conforming with the same 8 feet addition, but I'm only doing it towards the back of the house, and I'm filling in the gap where the back porch is and extending it to the right side of the house. It's going to make a little L in there. I don't know if you can see it on the drawings.
So you have your drawing in front of you, and if you take a look, this was the area before.
I can't see it.
We can't see it.
You gotta go to the other side.
You gotta stand on the other side.
This was the area before that you permitted. She's shifting it down.
Oh, okay.
And now it's these two. This one was never in question as far as non-conformity, so it's just do this. It's shifting down 8 feet. I did check with legal counsel. Because this is such a small change, the board can decide that it's a non-consequential change and would not require an additional hearing, or you can determine that if you think it's a substantial change, you could require a new hearing.
I make a motion it's non-substantial.
I'll second. All those in favor? Aye.
Go for it.
Thank you, Judy.
Happy holidays. I appreciate my gift.
Yeah.
Thank you for being patient.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay. So I'm going to move that we enter into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, the police chief. We will
How about we not come back?
We
can
will
always vote
not-
to approve it like you did for mine at the next.
We will not return to open session upon completion of the executive session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye, Patrick. Roll call vote.
Hi, Chuck.
Aye, Roxanne.
All righty. Thanks, everyone.